The world doesn't think that the gospel can change your life, but we know that it can. And that's why we want you to hear these stories of transformation, stories of freedom, people getting free from sin and healed from sin because of Jesus. This is Death to Life.
So, they realized something happened when the police cars went flying by. They didn't see me get taken to the police station. All they saw was a body coming out on a gurney out of my house. And they're like, oh. So they collected up my dog and took her, and they were just hoping. They were just hoping. They didn't know. And so, when they saw police cruiser drop me back off, I was very alone. I had my friends, but I still lived alone. And suicidal thoughts started to come in. Just laying there in bed, thinking about putting a pistol in my head.
Welcome to the Death to Life podcast. Today's episode is with my friend Jonathan Phillips. And this story is definitely one of a kind. We have never had this kind of a story on the podcast, and it is super beautiful. I love to see Jonathan's heart. I love it because I love his dad, Floyd, and, after recording with Floyd and then having his son, Jonathan, on, I think it's just super special to see what the gospel is doing, how it's bringing people from death to life and showing how we've always been loved. And so this story is not for the faint of heart. It's not for children. So buckle up, strap in. Love y'all, appreciate y'all. This is Jonathan. Hear ye him. Okay. Yeah, so we've had relatives on the Death to Life podcast. We've had brothers and sisters, and we've even had fathers and sons. But we've never had the father have their episode first. It's usually goes the other way around. So this is kind of cool.
Yeah.
And if you guys don't know, this is Jonathan Phillips, who I've never actually had a full-length conversation with, but I'm excited to, man. Tell me, where are we going? Before you answer that, I did record a podcast with your pop.
Mm-hmm.
It did go 8 hours. We then recorded another one that was like an hour and 45 minutes. But I know a lot, and Floyd's a great friend of mine. But man, I'm so excited to hear where your story starts in all of this.
Well, we could start that 12 hours I spent in a police station planning my life in prison, but
what?
No, we should probably start at the beginning.
Yeah, start in prison. I do want to hear that part of the story, but yeah, man, where are you from? Yeah, where are you from?
Well, I was born in Texas, but raised in Michigan, Berrien Springs.
Okay. Berrien Springs.
So I would say at least third generation SDA.
Yeah.
Well, if you heard my dad's story, then it's not all roses and
I have a good idea of his mindset and the legalism that he was, trying to get out of. But what did it seem like to you growing up? What did it feel like to you?
Well, at first, you're a kid. You just see what you see, and everything is kind of, rainbows and unicorns, and everything's good. And as you start learning a little bit more, it definitely started leaning more towards very law-heavy, legalistic, and you start feeling condemned when you can't keep the law. And, you kind of go back and forth a little bit on that. But, yeah, it was definitely the conservative side of Adventism is what I was raised on. So...
when did you start realizing that, when you're a kid, like you just said, you don't know, you just know that this is the way they do it, and you don't even consider if it's right or wrong. It's just the way, right? How
Yeah.
old were you when you were just like, huh, like other people do it this way. Other people think this is important. We think this is important that maybe other people don't. When did that start hitting you?
Well, I mean, I grew up in an SDA Mecca, so
Yeah.
most of my friends were, SDAs, and I went to school with them. But even there, at least my best friend, he was part of the church, but they weren't really religious, or they would go, but not, they were more secular in his upbringing, I should say. His parents were both working too much to do much there, but they just wanted to send their kid to a private school. So, but he's a great guy. Don't get me wrong. He's a surgeon now. So
Awesome.
last I knew, um, and growing up in an SDA, well, I mean, my parents sacrificed a lot to send me to private school. So, um, growing up in that, you get a little, yeah, I got a little bit of it. Probably near the end of grade school, I started to feel that where I couldn't keep the rules. So, I knew I couldn't do it by myself, and I wasn't really getting any right answers. But then again, I was also busy living life and not necessarily looking for those right answers.
So who was God, man?
He was judgmental.
Hmm.
Um, if I didn't keep the rules, angry, looking for a reason to punish me,
Hmm.
which wasn't hard to find because I couldn't keep the rules. I mean, don't get me wrong, I wasn't a rebel for the most part, but I also, I wasn't perfect either.
Right.
So, but yeah, growing up, in grade school with not being popular, I was the dork, the geek, and especially come 8th grade when I had to get glasses.
Hmm.
But oddly enough, my best friend was the coolest kid in the class, so that helped a little bit. And like I said, he was a great guy. It probably helped that his house was on the way home, so we'd just walk home and stop at his house and hang out.
Right.
So, um, but yeah, God was always serious. Didn't like the fun things. It's okay. It's Friday night. Time to, clean everything and before it gets sundown and get serious. And time to stop having fun. Like I said,
Yeah.
that was more near the end of grade school.
Yeah. So yeah, keep going, man. What was like growing up, high school, and what happened?
Well, my parents actually met at Laurel Brook in Tennessee.
Hmm.
Private, obviously, not. I don't think they were part of the denomination. Maybe at one point, but they met there, so they sent me there. And at the time, they were teaching very fundamentalist views,
Hmm.
and so that reinforced that. And you're being a high school kid, you're trying to figure out life, and things start changing. And I would say near the end of grade school, it's one thing that kind of did not help. Besides the glasses, was I started gaining some weight. So I was kind of pudgy when I started high school,
Hmm.
and that went away in about 4 months, 3 months, because you have to work hard. And then I started, having people and encourage me to work out. So yeah, I lost like 60 pounds in a couple of months, 2-3 months. So
60 pounds in a couple, 2 or 3 months.
no, I guess it was only 50 pounds. I was like 160 when I started, down to 110 by the first break. So
Came home with like a 6 pack, and your parents are like, "Wow, that private school money."
well, that I didn't have access to fried chicken in the middle of the night anymore either.
Okay.
Wake up hungry and go. But when you sneak down to the basement to get a snack and you have to open a can, well, I got to eat it all because I can't leave evidence.
Right. Right.
So yeah, that's how I got pudgy. But it is what it is. Let's see here.
How long did you go to Laurelbrook? All
For
four?
2 years, and while I didn't necessarily appreciate their teaching as far as religious views. because they were extremely and very segregated. There was only like one meal a day you could even eat with the girls. And then it was based on how you walked into the cafeteria, and they line you up on either side of the table. So it's very, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. I mean, high school, raging hormones, But
What years were you in high school?
I started in 96 was my freshman year.
Okay, so you're a couple years older.
Couple years ahead of you, yeah.
Yeah, I remember when I got to Union College, there was a guy's entrance and a girl's entrance, and they would tell me stories of how in the 50s and 60s that people would come in and just based on how you were lined up that you got sat at a table, but then they juked the system and they figured out how to sit with other people. And I was like, I'm hearing it like Laurel Brook in the 96, 97, 98, they still roll with that style.
They were still doing that. And yeah, I mean, like chapel's all segregated, everything's segregated. I guess the classrooms weren't as much, but better supervision there. So, but yeah, I mean, when you get treated like you're going to do something wrong, you might
look into.
You don't feel good.
Yeah.
You treat like a criminal, you act like one. Which I was still, for the most part, a rule follower, but I was also good at not getting caught. So, if I was going to do anything, which wasn't much, but every once in a while you try and sneak out a little bit. But yeah.
Were you? Did you have any interest in spiritual things, or were you just going through the motions? This is my life.
I did to a degree. You get those spiritual highs a little bit when other people start getting excited, which is, it's not uncommon. But I still didn't. And I realized the other day that in high school and out of high school a little bit, I didn't actually really want to go to heaven. It sounded boring, very boring. I was just like, it's just going to be a bunch of stuffy people playing harps and walking around. Like, why would I want to go there? And why would I want to live forever? I mean, life's okay, but that was later on, when life wasn't as good. It's like, why would I want to live forever like this? I don't want to do that. So I realized that the other day. I was like, I guess I didn't actually really even want to go. But,
interesting.
In high school, and after a couple years, because they were, like I said, they were pretty strict there. It's funny, they'd have the Sabbath afternoon hikes, and then halfway through the hike, they'd say, okay, swap people you're walking with. So I was the guy that would jump in between the two people that were dating and wanted to still talk. And I'd just be like, you can ignore me. I'm right here, but I'm separating you two, so now you can continue talking for the second half of the hike. Yeah, I was that guy. I was usually the wingman.
Wingman. You're Goose.
Yeah. Only with no mustache at the time.
Yeah.
So after that, don't get me wrong, when it comes to practical skills, it's a self-supporting institution. So they taught me a lot of practical skills there. I mean, I learned anywhere from roofing, carpentry. About the only thing I didn't learn was drywall.
Oh, wow.
All kinds of things. I mean, I was a CNA, where I was training as a CNA before I left. You'd run boilers in the middle of the night. All that didn't turn out well. Probably haven't heard my dad. There was
wonderful people there. I'm sure there were wonderful people there. Just
absolutely. And I believe the staff meant well. Don't get me wrong. I believe they meant well, but yeah. But my dad ended up being in contact with a guy who used to, I think he actually went to school there and was staff there until shortly before I got there. And he had gone out to Oregon, outside of Portland, and helped start up another one. Oddly enough, was called Laurel Wood. So we went out there and visited because I was telling my parents that I wasn't, I didn't really like this. Constantly being watched. And I mean, I was accused of all kinds of things, not usually to my face, but be like, oh, you're dating so-and-so. I was like, I'm not dating anybody. Like, I talked to them, but they were constantly, I don't know, it was like high school drama, but it was coming a lot from the staff. So, yeah, you feel accused a lot, and you're like, no, I'm not interested. So we went out and visited that one in Oregon, outside Portland. I'm trying to remember the Gaston, Oregon. And it used to be a conference school, and it was shut down. They opened it back up as private, self-supporting. Although they had a lot harder time self-supporting, they weren't really set up for it as much. And it was almost like a breath of fresh air when I went out there for my junior and senior. And there's still rules, but the segregation was not as much there. Obviously separate dorms, but you could mingle a little bit, a lot more freedom, and that helped. Let's see here, check my notes. I don't want to miss anything on that. And of course, you're being a teenage boy, you get in trouble just from the hormones alone.
Yeah.
So, yeah, definitely not proud of everything there, but I was looking for affirmation. I realized that. Obviously from girls, that's preferences for a teenage boy.
That's how it goes, man. Isn't that how it goes?
Yeah. See, I think it was I guess it would have been early my senior year. I finally did start dating. That just graduated in 2000 and ended up breaking up with her and getting back together like 6 months later. And at that point, I'm like, well, I guess I better seal the deal here if I don't want her to get away again. And so I did end up asking her to marry me, and she did. At that point in time, I had trained as a CNA right out of high school, and I did that for, I don't know, 8 months or so before my roommate, who I went to school with, he got me a job at Laser Eye Clinic. And as a maintenance man, helping him with IT, stuff like that. Which, yeah, I love that job. I was treated very well. That was, I would say, if you're looking for LASIK, I would highly recommend Dr. Brian Will, because he is probably one of the first employers that actually modeled Christ to me. Oh, wow.
And where was he, in Oregon?
Vancouver, actually. I ended up moving to Vancouver. So not too far from Portland. I was living in Portland as a CNA, and then we ended up moving to Vancouver shortly after I got that job, because commuting from suburbs of Portland up to Vancouver every day, that's like an hour and a half drive for a 20-minute drive without traffic. So it got old. So anyway, ended up marrying that girl. And after I lost my virginity to her, and then I had to do the right thing.
Led you to be like, we got to get married now, huh?
That was kind of the catalyst. Like, well, I have to now.
Yeah.
And so, not too long after that, 9/11 happened. We got married when was that? Yeah, I can't remember now. I remember it was September, but I think it was about a year after that. Or no, actually, we got married after. I think it was 2012.
2012, you mean, or 2002?
No, was it? Oh yeah, 2002. Sorry, yeah, 2002. I had that in my notes. I probably should have checked. Not too long after that, actually, I ended up losing my job. Obviously, 9/11, job cuts and everything.
Sure.
And they did end up bringing me back. I went on unemployment not too long after, and then they brought me back for another year and a half or so, and then I came back. Lost my job shortly. I want to say it was like 2003. And I was married, and I remember. So I guess I should tell this part of the story. I never actually got baptized in high school or grade school. It wasn't until I was getting ready to get married, and I, yeah, the pastor was like, well, I can't baptize you or I can't marry you guys unless you're baptized. And she had already been baptized and I hadn't. And so I was like, well, yeah, I guess why not? And so I did. I mean, I went through the studies a little bit, and I'm not going to say it was a lie, but the majority of the reason was just so I could get married.
Yeah, you
That was
wouldn't
the
have
main
done it
goal.
unless the marriage thing. But I mean, you were
No.
believing what they were teaching you.
Well, I mean, yeah, I believed some truth
Sure.
and a lot of lies that I didn't know were lies, obviously.
Right.
Let's see here. So I remember my dad actually calling me not too long after that, after we got married and after I got baptized. And I remember him trying to encourage me in the best way he knew how at the time. And it wasn't that I was against following Christ, but I saw that as, I guess I saw that as now I have to start keeping all the rules. And one of those things was I thought I would have to start evangelizing or witnessing or going door to door, because that's one thing I did not like in high school.
Yeah.
And I realize now the main reason I didn't want to do that is because I didn't have any good news to share.
Right.
And I couldn't have told you that back then. I was not that wise. But yeah, I wasn't real interested in doing that. And I think that's kind of the one thing that just steered me away from pursuing a relationship with Christ, because I thought there were certain things that I'd have to do. Like I'd be obligated to do them. And yeah. Let's see here.
You were an adult pretty early in life.
Yeah, I got married at 21. Like
But
right.
I mean, getting a job right out of high school,
Yeah.
like sometimes people screw around in college a little bit more and they don't take things seriously. You had to fend for yourself, right? You had to get a job and start working.
Well, I mean, yeah, I could have probably moved back to Michigan at the time, but I didn't really want to. You know, I was dating, and I didn't really want to move back to Michigan, and I didn't want to pack all my stuff up, and so I figured, well, I can just get a job here. I didn't know what I wanted to do in college, so why would I go waste money? And my scholarship from Walla Walla College at the time was $300. I'm like, well, that's not going to go very far.
That'll get you a couple meals in the calf.
Yeah, that's about it. So, yeah, I mean, I just jumped right into the workforce. And so not long after losing my job at the laser eye clinic, we didn't have, I couldn't find work. I was on unemployment, but I couldn't find anything at the time. There was really nobody hiring. And so my wife at the time, her uncle and her aunt and uncle owned a house out in Joseph, Oregon. They were planning on living there at some point, but they were still over in McMinnville, I think. And so they said, well, why don't you just go out there and, caretake the property for us, and you can live there until you find something. And that was probably one of the happier times. Little bit more off the grid. Just you go out, explore the woods, go play in the creek. It was literally on the side of Mount Joseph, right next to Hurricane Creek. So it's just beautiful, beautiful area. But can't find work out there either. So eventually, because my wife at the time, she had an uncle in Walla Walla, and we decided to start looking up there. And she ended up finding a job because she had trained as a phlebotomist. And so she ended up finding a job up in Walla Walla. And then I ended up following shortly after once I found a job. Packed everything up, brought it up. And I started mobile sandblasting and painting. And this is where an important person enters the story, which you'll find out later. I met a man named Josh. I was working with him, and he worked there. I think because it was mobile. It was generally seasonal,
Mm-hmm.
And so I became friends with him. He lived in Walla Walla as well. And so he was struggling on and off, with other things like alcohol. And I think he was in AA shortly after I met him. And anyway, so he liked to game, and he got me a little bit into gaming, computer gaming. And so we would do that together in our downtime. At
What
this
game?
point, my marriage isn't going real fantastic. It's, you know, it's struggling a little bit. I mean, neither one of us really knew who we were.
Right.
Definitely didn't know who we were in Christ. And obviously, my tactic was avoidance if I didn't know how to deal with something. So I wasn't making things go very well, just escaping reality more than anything. She did tend to push going to church a little bit, although not a lot. And so we would go on occasion, and it wasn't really all that enjoyable to me. I wasn't getting anything from it because I didn't find it. I didn't relate to much of the stuff that was being taught. Until one day, at Walla Walla Youth Chapel, there was a seminary student who gave a sermon. I will never forget the gist of it. I mean, forget parts of the sermon. Essentially, he said, don't do something just because it's tradition. Search and find out why it's tradition. Make it yours, and then do it or don't. But learn why. And that was the gist of the sermon, and it was very well given. And I'm like, wow, that was great. And I'm walking out the door thinking, man, that's the best sermon I've ever heard. Like, this guy's intelligent, and everyone around me, oh, it's blasphemy. I can't believe somebody would say that. And I'm like, okay, I'm done with this. I am done with this. And I may have gone to church like one more time after that, but I'm like, I'm done. It's like, I can't do this. That was a beautiful sermon.
Name the thing, just that people were against that kind of just intelligent, rational thinking, or what was it?
I mean, that was mostly it. Like that they would call him, call what he preached heresy, when all he said was, think for yourself, study the Bible, and learn why we do the things we do. And if the tradition no longer applies, then don't do it. And nobody really seemed to like that, including my wife at the time. She might remember it differently, but I don't remember her being happy with that sermon. I felt like I was the only one that walked out of there with anything. So yeah, I was like, I don't really want to surround myself with these kind of people. And so I remember not long after that, because it was seasonal work, my job ended. And so I ended up on unemployment. And at this point, marriage is really not going very well. And I'm still a lot of avoidance. And we ended up getting divorced in 2005. So about 2.5 years of marriage. So I guess it would have been, about 2.5 years.
Was it a surprise? Did it catch you by surprise?
No, she moved out before. I felt like in an attempt to control me. Now, I'll say something about her, and then I don't want to bad talk her. She's about the most stubborn woman I've ever met. You could use rational argument all day long, and she would never admit she was wrong. Only one time did she ever admit she was wrong, and that was after she realized that moving out wasn't going to get me to change. It wasn't going to get me to do what she wanted. And she decided she wanted to try and get back together. And at that point, I was like, I'm done. I'm out. And so she decided to file for, at that point she realized, I think she'd come over on our anniversary and realized I was done. Cause I was out front chatting with a neighbor girl. I was like, you left like 6 weeks ago. Like, I don't care anymore. I'm done. And I don't want to make her feel bad if she ever listens to this, which I doubt it, but the day she left, that night I went and got a pizza, got a movie, and felt like I had a breath of fresh air. I felt like I could be myself, because we were arguing all the time. It was not pretty. I felt like we were reading two different dictionaries, because I'd say one thing and she would take it a totally different way. Don't get me wrong, I was not faultless at all. I was definitely not in a great place, but
Sure.
we weren't speaking the same languages either. And I say this to people, and I'll still say it. I still love her. She still has a piece of my heart.
For sure.
I mean, but I realized at the time I couldn't live with her. And when she moved out, I realized that was probably for the best. And I still think it was. So let's see. Where were we at after that?
So that's 05?
Yep, 05. Then I started dating the neighbor, who, oddly enough, also grew up SDA, but with
Well, if it's in Walla Walla, then it's not. It's not too hard to find a Seventh-day Adventist in Walla Walla.
Well, I wasn't doing it because she was SDA. She
Right.
was definitely not practicing. She'd walked away pretty quickly, based on her abusive childhood.
Oh.
And so her and her roommate were, we all kind of started partying together. And I do remember going back to this guy, Josh, who I made friends with, first friend I ever made in Walla Walla. When he heard that I got a divorce or that she had left, he came over and started banging on my door. This is before, I don't think I had a cell phone at the time. And he came to check on me. He's like, I just want to make sure you weren't hanging from the ceiling fan. I'm like, well, I don't have a ceiling fan, but no, I'm great. And so we hung out a little bit more. He actually ended up helping me get a job over at the bar and casino because he was cooking there. And so I started cooking there with him. And, you start the party life, go to bed at like 3 a.m. And
If you're working at a restaurant, is a casino restaurant?
Yeah.
I mean, that's probably where, if you want to know where the party's at.
Yeah.
Working at a restaurant, they'll know.
Well, I mean, yeah, that definitely. And so, I just, like I said, started partying, sex, alcohol, and computer games, not the drugs. Plenty of rock and roll, but not the drugs. Definitely started questioning all my religious beliefs. I basically decided at that point that I was going to walk away from religion, which I was trying to walk away from legalism, and rewire my brain. What I had wasn't working. I knew I couldn't keep the rules, and I knew, I wasn't interested anymore. And I remember, like I said, plenty of drinking at the time. That's about the time I started drinking. I remember one time Josh had come over, and my girlfriend and I were drinking. We were all three of us drinking together, and he had a problem. Like I said, when I met him, I think he was in AA, but I was in no place to keep him away from it, obviously, and obviously encouraging it a little bit. Or maybe no, actually, I don't think he was in AA. He ended up getting blackout drunk, decided to take a walk, and we lived in apartments, and there was like 4 buildings that looked almost all the same, and he could not remember what door. And so he started banging on doors at like 2 a.m. Needless to say, he got the cops called on him. He wasn't too happy about getting arrested and woke up in jail. Not quite sure why he was there.
Right.
And so we went and visited him, and that's when he got back into AA. And at that point in time, I was working. I think I had already moved on to a different job, sandblasting and painting and powder coating. And oddly enough, all those employers, other than the bar and casino were SDAs, and not that I want to speak badly of them, but they weren't really modeling Christ to me. I felt like they cared more about the money, and they would use religion as a way to get more money in a SDA rich town.
Sure.
They may have meant the best, but I didn't feel that way, and that also could have been my perspective. But I started exploring more into New Age a little bit at that point, exploring the spiritual realm, but not with God as the center.
So, who were you reading, or what were you reading about?
I actually wasn't reading. I was just talking to different people who they would do energy work, Reiki, and other things like that, and that world is real.
Sure.
It is not of God, but it is real. And
there's aspects of it that really kind of make sense, but then when you divorce them from God, like the idea of that we all have energy and energy is flowing through us, and like if you go into Buddhism, like we have some sanskaras or things that are plugging up our energy, and so we need to release those things. Well, that sounds like forgiveness in some ways. But like, in order to get your energy to flow, you just need to release any kind. And so a lot of it can make sense, but then divorced from Christ, it's just a little bit more of you're trying to figure it out. You know what I'm saying?
And I was. And I always believed there was a higher power. I just refused to believe what I was brought up with because it didn't work for me. I wasn't saying there was no God. I just didn't like the one I was brought up to believe because I didn't feel loved. I felt judged. And I believed I was judged because of that. But it wasn't like I was completely closed off to God.
Sure.
And I say that because one day I ended up getting heat stroke about an hour away from where I normally worked at work, sandblasting out on blacktop in the hottest day of the year, like 115 degrees. And I ended up getting heat stroke. And I remember on the way back, I wasn't driving, thankfully. But the other guy had just sat in the nice air-conditioned pickup the whole day. And I guess it was too hot for him to work out there. And so I was in a bad way. Like I knew I was not feeling good. And at that point in time, I was definitely exploring a lot of energy work. And I started trying to pull in pure energy to cleanse my body. And I sat there trying and trying and trying. And I forgot this until a couple of months ago when I was talking to Jadra. I think I finally did say, okay, I'm open to anybody. If God wants to heal me, let him heal me. And it was almost instant. I got it was like an icy wind just went from the top of my head to the bottom of my toes, and that sigh of relief, and I fell asleep. I was healed. And I thought, of course I woke up and went about my way and totally forgot that I'd asked God to help and did not give him the credit for that. I'll give him the credit for that now. But no, and that just kind of, I didn't explore it a ton, but I explored it some. So I ended up quitting that sandblasting job and ran through most of my savings. And before I finally got hired on at Walmart, and I worked nights there for, I don't know, I can't remember, a few months, which I don't recommend, but it is what it is. It helped pay the bills.
It'll take years off your life, man. Working nights is a hard job, man.
So I decided I was done with that, and I went and applied at the Walla Walla prison, and eventually got hired there, and started in there 2008 or so. And that'll take years off your life too. but I had fun at
I've
the
always
time.
wondered about that. What was were you a guard?
I was, yes.
Okay, explain in the way that you can why that would take years off your life. Because is it just it's so tense every day?
Yeah, you have to basically have a hyper awareness from when you get there to when you go home because, you know, you don't want to get stabbed. So you have to be hyper aware. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't want to say you're constantly worried about that. You can go sit down and in a place where there aren't any inmates and relax a little bit for a short time, but not very long. And yeah, I would describe that job as basically working in a dangerous adult daycare.
So
Um,
you're constantly in a state of stress. You're constantly
yeah,
in your body. That'll do damage to your body for sure.
and, and after a time, it gets very difficult to turn that off. And so you find yourself, you might be able to turn it off when you get home, maybe. But you go out to a restaurant, you go find a corner booth so you can watch all the entrances, and you're generally armed at all times because you never know. I mean, you see what would be described as the dredges of society. You see the violence that they're willing to participate in, and the fact that the main reason you're not getting stabbed is because they haven't had the opportunity. I'm not saying they're all like that. They're definitely not, but there are many that would happily do
But there's
that.
a reason they're in there.
There is a reason they're in there. Yeah, there's definitely a reason they're in there.
Did you ever like have any violence towards you? Like, did that ever happen?
No, no, I helped break up a couple of fights. I think, and I'll even there not necessarily wanting to follow God. I had a suspicion that the reason that most fights either happen on my days off or when I was unable to respond was because my parents were praying for me.
Oh man.
I would say most of the major ones, because they were some pretty major ones when there were some pretty nasty staph injuries. I remember, I want to say it was 2011, I believe, in January, not in our prison, but over in Monroe, there was an officer that was strangled with her own mic cord.
Murphy.
And that really brought it home. Like, yeah, it really brought it home how dangerous it was. And that was actually shortly after I had purchased a motorcycle and met some friends that I worked with who invited me to start riding with them. And that sounds
you just want to
bad.
be a statistic, man. You're just like raising like I've got the kind of dangerous job. How do I find a way to get there dangerously?
Well, yeah, but I got to tell you, motorcycles, I will not sell my motorcycle. It ain't going to happen. I love it. It's exhilarating. It's a different kind of freedom, but it's beautiful. And so I became friends with them, ended up joining the riding club. And that being said, you know, we're all either law enforcement or corrections or supporting those type of people. And, you know, we're all keeping it above board. And I got to say, they stood by me through a lot. And
Oh, praise the Lord.
yeah, so that, I honestly think that was God's doing.
Sure.
It wasn't too long after I met them, maybe 6 months or so, I ended up breaking up with that girlfriend that I had started dating after my first marriage. That relationship ended up somewhat similarly. Things weren't going well. We weren't communicating well. We were living together. And yeah, I just started withdrawing again, mainly into computer games. That was
What games are you playing? I asked earlier, and I don't think you heard me. What game? Like, say that again.
No, I didn't actually hear you.
Yeah.
The first one, at the first divorce, I think I was playing Star Wars Galaxies. That was kind of big back then. That's what my friend Josh had gotten me into.
Uh-huh.
And I think on the second one, I was playing World of Warcraft.
I was going to guess it was World of Warcraft. There's something about those games that I don't know. How is it that they just keep you on there? Like there's some Like, people devote years of their life to World of Warcraft. What is it about it?
Well, I mean, they're designed that way. Most of the time it's, if you want something, you have to do little incremental things or a lot of things. And, they make it so it just do one more thing before I log off. Let's just do one more thing. That's the way they design it. And they're good at designing. That's for sure.
Yeah, it's like the casino people know how to keep you in the casino. The video game people know how to keep you on the... Same with doom scrolling on Facebook and Instagram.
Oh, yeah.
They're not dummies. They're making money.
Nope. So yeah, that was about 2012. And I remember one day I showed up for a ride and they're like, "Oh, where's your girlfriend?" Because she'd ride with me. She did have her own motorcycle, but I bought it for her. And she still didn't want to ride it, but that's fine. She just wanted to ride on the back of mine, so they asked me where she was, and I'm like, yeah, I don't know. I haven't seen her in like 3 weeks. They're like, "Man, that's what we're for. Call us. We'll come over. We'll hang out. That's what this is about." And they basically did become my local family. And what kind of triggered because she left in a similar manner. She just moved out. And because I was usually not willing to commit to a breakup, I was just going to ignore things. But avoidance was my thing. And they became my local family. And I ended up buying a house, which I was in the process of doing that when things kind of took a turn and she moved out, because I started house shopping without her. And she was just feeling left out. And like I said, I don't necessarily want to talk bad about anybody, but I'm 99% sure she was cheating on me at the time. And that's one of the reasons that I wasn't going to include her. And so I did end up house shopping, and strangely enough, I'm pretty sure God made this happen as well. I wouldn't have given him credit at the time. But I found a house that was about a half a block away from our club president and our sergeant at arms, who lived like 2 doors apart. So that was like, yeah, that worked. And a small little house I could afford. And that turned out to be a very good thing. It wasn't terribly long after that, my cousin, who I grew up with, ended up dying. And he ended up, he was searching, and he searched in the wrong places and ended up overdosing.
I'm sorry to hear that.
And and it wasn't, I want to say right in that time period as well, Josh had ended up moving over to Anacortes, the other side of Washington. And he called me one night and ready to commit suicide. He was miserable. His marriage was basically non-existent, just roommates with the kid. His extramarital affairs had broken off, and he was struggling at that point, I know actually he was getting back into drugs, cocaine, and he was a long ways away. I couldn't really help him. And looking back, I had no way to help him other than, hey, don't do that.
Right.
And so April 2013, he came over into town to visit. And as usual, we got together, and he liked drinking. And at the time, I was very heavily drinking. Usually I would drink myself to sleep. So generally hard whiskey, because it was cheaper that way. Whiskey or bourbon or things like that. And so he came over, and we ended up getting fairly drunk. And he decided that since I worked at the prison, I was going to mule cocaine into the prison for him. And that
he was like a plug for somebody in the prison, and he wanted you to do that?
No, I don't. His bartender over in Anacortes actually was the drug dealer. And he had told that guy that I worked in prison who came up with the brilliant idea of I was going to mule drugs.
These guys need to watch a movie, man. So many movies. This is how they get caught.
Yeah. So I don't remember if I told him that my cousin had died about a month before from an overdose.
Right.
I've never been into drugs. You probably couldn't have picked a worse time to try and convince me to do something like that. You wouldn't have been able to do it anyway, but you couldn't have picked a worse time. Like
you were vulnerable.
I hated drugs.
Oh, you were going to be mad, not vulnerable. Oh, okay.
Not mad, but like I wanted nothing to do with drugs. Not to mention I knew, because the day I started started training, there was a guy who was muling drugs and got caught and went to prison to live there.
Yeah.
So like,
now you're having your meals here.
Yeah. So I'm like, no, this isn't, I'm not going to do this. He didn't take well to that. And because I believe at this point he was, I think he was blackout drunk. I'm not sure he knew what he was doing, but he started, and this was an all-night affair. He started randomly attacking me. He was a smoker, so he would want to go outside and smoke a cigarette. And I was constantly trying to tell him, like, this ain't going to happen. And I think he finally started getting through his head that I wasn't going to do it. And then he's like, well, I'm just going to finish this half gallon of whiskey, and I'm like, man, that's going to kill you. Like, you've already had a lot. And I don't know if it would have killed him or not, but I was trying to convince him not to do it. It's like, I didn't care about the whiskey. I can buy another one. Not a big deal, but I didn't want him to die.
Right.
And so he started getting violent, started kicking and hitting me. I think he bit me on the head at least once. Okay. And it was kind of random, a punch or a kick here.
Punch, kick, bite on the head, as naturally.
Yeah. Well, I was not giving up on him. I thought I was trying to save his life. And he ended up, so the way my house was laid out at the time, that's probably still is to this day, there's a couple of steps down to a little, I don't know, I'd say a 3x3 area with a door facing outside, but the steps kind of come in the side. And across from the steps, across from the door, you got like cabinets, and across from them, you got coat hooks on the wall with it. I hung my mop and my broom and stuff there. And I walked in after he was smoking. He walked up into the kitchen. And as I got to the top step, he turned around and kicked me in the chest. And when I say he kicked me in the chest, this man was a natural martial artist. He was very fast, even drunk, very precise. And I flew across the opening there. And what I didn't realize until later was I missed getting the back of my skull impaled on that coat hook by probably an inch.
Mercy.
I think there was an angel there.
Praise the Lord.
So at that point, I finally got it in my head that maybe I should fight back. So I stood up and I started trying to rehearse moves. I'm not a scrapper. I'm just not a scrapper. But, I'd been trained in self-defense and other techniques. And so I thought, yeah, if I just do this and do that. And I was still with enough presence of mind to realize that, now if I start doing that, he's going to kill me. Like, I may be stronger than him, but I'm not faster than him at all. And so I didn't end up doing that. I just brushed by him and I went in the bathroom. And at this point, I think this is about 6 o'clock in the morning. Like I said, all night affair. He said, well, I won't actually repeat what he said, but he said, okay, you don't want to do this? Fine. Tell me you don't want to do this. I'll forever know you as a blankety blank, and I'll leave. I said, just effing leave.
Yeah, right.
And so he did. At this point, I think I'd already tossed my my shirt in the wash because it had blood on it. Thankfully, I was drunk, so I didn't actually get harmed that badly. Felt like a freight train hit me, but so he left, and I come out and I'm standing in my hallway between my living room and my kitchen, and I'm just standing there like, what happened? Just trying to process. Man, what happened? I have no idea what happened. And I don't even know how long I was standing there. But the next thing I know, my front door is rattling in its frame. And it is a solid wooden door. And it is rattling. And I'm seeing daylight come through the door frame as it rattles. And I'm like, oh, crap. And so he bangs on the door again. And at that point, I turned and went into my spare room and did what I had trained myself to do, which was grab my shotgun.
Oh, no.
And I watch him walk around the house through the window. And I stand where the other entrance to the kitchen from the hallway. And I stand there next to my fridge. And I think I yelled, just leave. And he banged on the back door one time. And then with one kick, he kicked it in.
Oh, mercy.
Shattered the door frame. And he came up inside, up the 2 stairs. And I gave him one more command as I racked a shell to just leave. And he didn't. And I fired. And he looks surprised that I would do that. And I kind of felt surprised that I would do that, but it's what I trained myself to do. And so I set the shotgun down away as he fell to the ground. And I grabbed my cell phone and I immediately called 911. I scared the operator because I was way too calm. I guess I should mention I was dating that particular operator's ex at the time.
Oh. You knew the operators?
Well, the 911 operator. She had actually been a 911 operator, and she worked at the police station still. And I had just started dating her.
So you know her name. You're like, hey, Susan, send a.
No, it wasn't her. It was her ex.
Oh, okay. Oh.
So needless to say, he didn't know who I was at the time. But when he found out, he's like, oh, that guy's guilty. He was way too calm. And that's the thing about first responders is when you get in that mode, you're not freaking out. You're calm. You're cool. You're giving pertinent information. So I was.
Also, some people get calmer when events get crazier. Like that's how their mind works.
Yeah. And I think part of that, training at the prison had kind of become that way a little bit more, or reinforced it anyway. So I'm on the phone with the operator, or the 911 operator, and Josh stops breathing. And so I said, well, I'm going to put you on speakerphone and I'm going to start CPR. And so I did. Until he told me to come out of the house with my hands up. And I did. And
like just a squad car showed up, or a couple squad cars, or like.
Oh yeah, they weren't very far away.
Okay.
Took them about a few minutes, and so they asked if they could cuff me, and I said, of course. I'm not resisting anything. And so they sat me on my front porch, and that's when I lost it. I was done. I didn't have to be in control anymore. And so I was done. I lost it. And I cried for probably at least an hour and a half straight. I don't know. I was out. And so, yeah. there's where I started my 12 hours in a police station planning my life in prison, because in my mind, you didn't mix alcohol and guns. You didn't do it. And I had mixed them, so therefore I was going to go to prison. And it's just the way my mind worked at the time. And having worked in prison for 4.5 years already, I was like, well, this is not going to be fun. I kind of know what to expect, and it's not going to be pretty. So near probably I'd say the 8-hour mark, somewhere in there, I started to realize, well, maybe I'm not going to prison, because I did actually follow the law. And so, yeah, about 12 hours later, they took me back home. And, yeah, that was, I walked in my front door and they said, yeah, watch out for reporters. They'll probably try and come and corner you. Don't talk to them. And so I made sure all the blinds were closed, and I was standing in my living room. I can't see my kitchen from my living room. I didn't want to go in there. And, I was just standing there like, what am I doing? What am I going to do? You know, my world just got completely rocked. I just killed a man. And that's when another knock came on the door. And 3 of my Hardheads members, the president, the vice president, and the sergeant at arms, who all just happened to be living up the street at the time, came down and got me. They said, get some clothes, let's go. You're going to stay at my house. Like I said, family. They were amazing. And so, even there, yeah, I stayed there for a few weeks. And it happened to be that the regular coroner was not on duty at the time. And so, the regular coroner probably would have cleaned some stuff up. A little bit. The assistant, not so much. Did
you say coroner?
Yeah.
They would come to the scene, or are you talking about like with the autopsy?
No, they came to the scene to collect.
Oh, so they just left it the way it was. Oh, okay, that's true.
Yeah, they just basically left it the way it was, and then said, you're clear to go back in. And the investigators, or they should say the detectives, had nailed my back door shut, because we can't shut it otherwise, and took me back. And then, so a couple weeks, I think it might have been about a week later, once again, my friends are there to help me, and they go help me clean up the blood. And yeah, it's, like I said, family. I didn't have family in the area, but they were my family. And still to this day, they're very good people.
Yeah, that's awesome that they were able to be there for you.
So after that, I moved back in my house, fixed the back, other hardheads. I gotta say, I know I say that a lot, but they're just, they were helping me in every way. They come over, help me replace my door. The ones that knew how. Some of them not so much, but just helping me all the time. And I guess I didn't mention I had just gotten a puppy like a month before. And so, they realized something happened when the police cars went flying by. They didn't see me get taken to the police station. All they saw was a body coming out on a gurney out of my house. And they're like, oh. So they collected up my dog and took her, and they were just hoping. They were just hoping. They didn't know. And so, yeah, when they saw police cruiser drop me back off, they came and collected me, and I stayed there for, it might have been a month, I don't remember. But that particular relationship I had started didn't last. We weren't really that good for each other anyway. She's a great lady, but at that point I was very alone. I had my friends, but I still lived alone. and suicidal thoughts started to come in. Just laying there in bed, thinking about putting a pistol to my head. But I couldn't do it. And I knew immediately I couldn't do it, because I would never do that to my family. I couldn't. Even if I wanted a way out, I wouldn't do it to them. So I wouldn't say I was ever in danger. True danger.
Like you never made a plan. You were just,
No.
those thoughts would come in your head.
No, I would just be laying there and the thoughts would come in my head. Like I said, I wanted a way out. I wasn't happy.
Right.
And
did your folks know anything about what was going on in your life? How often would you communicate with them?
Yeah, they knew. I think I ended up calling them the next day. It all kind of became a blur.
We're going to take a real quick break from this episode. I want to read you a review of the podcast that I read that just made me feel super awesome. This person said, true stories of the life-transforming power of the good gospel. Every episode is a testimony to the cleansing love of Christ. The message of righteousness by faith really shines through. In Christ by faith, you are free from sin. You know, our goal, our aim, our motto, all of it is to tell anyone within our hearing and who will listen to us that they are free from sin in the person of Jesus Christ. And we're only able to do that through the generosity of you guys. Going to www.lovereality.org/give. That is the reason we're able to keep this ministry going. And we want to keep it going. We want to continue to bless people by ministering the gospel to them. So please partner with us and go to lovereality.org/give so we can continue to get this message out for all who need to hear it. I love y'all. Appreciate y'all. Let's get back to the episode.
Thankfully, I think God knew that I needed some unconditional love, and that's what dogs are good for. So that did help a lot, and that gave me something to do while I wasn't working, and that was helpful. And obviously, you know, friends and I would, yeah. Either way, I was under investigation for a time. You know, they had to make sure that I actually hadn't muled any drugs, things like that. And I get it.
Sure.
They paid me, which was nice, but I started running out of money because I started working on my house. You know, it adds up pretty quick. And I was getting a little bored, but I finally was happy to get back to work, just to help keep my mind off of things. Obviously, things that start changing in my head a little bit. I was working evening shift, so I swore off drinking for a short time until I broke up with that girlfriend, and then I went back to it. And yeah, I would wake up in the morning and just be browsing the internet, and I would see something like, I remember one thing in particular. That's about the time that Disturbed came out with The Sound of Silence. And that is a powerful song. Like, their version of it is extremely powerful. And I'd just be sitting there bawling. You know, just things like that just started making me cry. It definitely gave me a much greater appreciation for life.
Sure.
That did not stop me, however, from continuing to carry a pistol almost everywhere I could. Obviously, you know, fear is a motivator it's not a good motivator, but it'll motivate you to do some things that aren't great. Even though I'd say at the time, my biggest fear probably actually was having to use it again. And I remember having one nightmare. I did end up going and seeing the staff counselor, which did help quite a bit. And I remember having only one dream about it. And somehow I was at my cousin's house from when I grew up, the cousin that had passed, and his brother. and I don't even know what I was doing there, but I was there, and Josh showed up. And in my dream, I'm like,
yeah, in the dream, yeah.
dude, you're alive. I don't know how it happened, but you're alive. And I was happy. And things escalated, and I ended up shooting him in my dream. And I'm like, what is going on? That time it was with the pistol, but it was just like, but the worst part about it was I woke up and I didn't feel like I did anything wrong. Well, I didn't feel like I had done anything wrong in the dream. And I woke up and I felt like a dirtbag. I'm like, I would do it again? Yeah. So that's why I would describe it as it was definitely a nightmare. Yeah. So I would occasionally go and see the counselor. Not a lot. He would encourage me to do the things like exercise and, and go out, spend time with friends, things like that, which are good things, and they do help. And at this point, I think I'd been working at the prison, I think about 5 years. This would have been 2013 still. And in October, my friend that also, because like I said, most of the hardheads worked at the prison. He said, man, I've got this girl you really got to meet. And she works at the prison. And I'm like, uh-oh. That's usually when you work there, you don't date there. It's generally not, well, I shouldn't say that. A lot of people do, but it's like, it's just kind of like a carnival, and it doesn't last. But I'm like, okay, well, that's fine. And the funny thing is, him and his girlfriend both worked there and both met her in the same day, and then both came home and said, hey, I got somebody that Jonathan should meet. I'm like, okay, yeah, I'll give it a shot. And so they ended up introducing me, and he introduced me in the parking lot. She was running late, and he stalled because we would ride to work together. And he stalled long enough to introduce me to her. And she walked off, and I turned back to him and was like, are you kidding? She's like a 10. He's like, go for it, man. I'm like, okay. Why not? What if I got to lose?
Right.
And so, yeah, we ended up, our first date was a motorcycle ride because she was actually pining for her motorcycle. She had actually just gotten a divorce, and not that long before, or I should say was in the process of getting divorced. Mm-hmm. And so we went for a motorcycle ride, and it just kind of all went on from there. And that's how I met my wife in prison.
Met your wife in prison?
Yeah, well, in the parking lot, but yeah, we just started talking.
Better story if it's in prison.
Yeah, exactly. So that was, that would have been 2013. And then it took about 6 months, maybe 8 months before I asked her to marry me. And we were living together at that point, at her place. And so we got married in 2015. And at this point, things were looking up. I'd slowed down with the drinking a little bit, but not completely quit. But life was looking a lot better. And so we got married officially. Actually, the president of our riding club married us. And the best part, well, maybe not the best part about the wedding, but one of my favorite parts was him and I are kind of Star Wars nerds. Mm-hmm. And so we came up with this plan to march up the aisle, just him and I, walk up the aisle to the throne room theme song from when they shot the Death Star.
Yeah.
From the first one.
Right.
And we walked up the aisle, and everybody's chuckling, and we're just smiling. It was good. I mean, and I knew she was a keeper pretty early on, but when she said, oh, yeah, go for it, when I suggested that music, she's like, go for it.
And I'm like, came in on the Millennium Falcon, and that beat the Kessel Run in under 12 parsecs. So, I mean,
I know, right? Exactly. So, yeah, that was good stuff. And I do remember at this point, my dad is starting to attempt to reach out to me a little bit more. We were kind of all business for many years there. And at the reception, he gave a speech, and he said he was proud of me. That means a lot. It means a lot. And that went a ways to healing our relationship. Or maybe I would say that was the beginning of it, or maybe not. I don't. And during this whole time, I'm still struggling, not just with the drinking, but Aprils are rough. Even there, like times of high stress, like getting ready for the wedding. My wife would, she'd be like, "Okay, go take a drive or go see a counselor. One of the two. You're getting angry easily. This isn't good." And so I did. I would usually just take a drive and listen to music, yell it and scream and cry, let it out. And that would help for a time. Yeah. So in 2019, I guess we lived there for a while. We decided to buy another house in Walla Walla, nice big house on an acre. Fixer-upper, but we started fixing it up. I was happy to do so, and we're both working in the prison, making great money, and not really drinking anymore. Definitely not drinking any less.
Yeah,
but still struggling, and yeah. July of 2020, I guess I didn't speak about my siblings. You probably haven't. You might. I don't know. You're not probably all that far away from Jennifer. She lives in Tennessee right now.
What part?
Yes. I can't remember. I've never been there. She just.
I think Floyd and I hung out when he was down there at her house, so it must not be. It might be 3 hours from me or something like that.
Yeah, I think it's not all that far. That's what I was hoping to go visit her this Christmas, but we ended up moving instead. So.
How many kids are there? How many siblings?
Well, there's two of us biological, but from Laurelbrook, there was a girl who came over from New Zealand, and we basically adopted her into the family. She was my sister's best friend, and I say was because unfortunately in July of 2020, she passed away.
Oh.
It was sudden. It was an aneurysm.
Hmm.
And I remember when I was out there for my cousin's funeral in Michigan, I actually stayed at her house, and I remember, and this is God. She started telling me how she was starting to study the Bible again at night, and she was keep in mind she was married to a woman at the time, so she was definitely not part of religion, but she was coming back to God, and
praise the Lord.
I'm fairly certain I'm going to see her again.
She believes in.
So that was rough.
God.
I remember one day, and this is, you can say however you want, but I remember one day I was working on the house there, and I usually had a few beers while I was working in the evening, and I was working and I just couldn't focus, and then all of a sudden I just laid down and started crying, and I'm like, what is going on? But now it's just probably me. I probably just haven't let it out for a while. And the next morning, my mom called and told me that Amy had died. I'm like, oh, maybe that's actually about the right time. It's like I felt that. We hadn't talked in a while, but still, we had a connection.
Sure.
She was basically a sister to me. So come October of 21, I think you know what happened right around those times.
Tell me, man.
Working in the prison, I saw this coming immediately upon announcement of having a shot. I said, they're going to make us take the shot. I know they're going to. It's going to be the first place they're going to make it mandatory in this state. And I told people that. They didn't believe me. Sure enough, a year later, it's exactly what happened. And I'm like, okay, I guess I'm not going to get a different job because I'm not taking that. I firmly believed it was not a good thing. And I mean, I considered it, but not for very long. I'm a pretty stubborn guy, and I knew it wasn't for me. And what bothered me was that I had no choice in that if I wanted to keep that job, I had no choice. And so that was my bigger problem. And I realized that free will is very important to me for a reason now. Like, that's how God operates. He operates on free will.
Yeah.
And even though I wasn't religious at the time, I wouldn't even necessarily still call myself religious. I did file for a religious exemption, and they granted it. And then they said, sorry, we can't accommodate you. It's like, okay, so all the stuff we've been doing all this time, wearing masks and testing twice a week, that's not enough? Nope. Oddly enough, the cases of COVID in that prison on staff actually went up when all of us got fired. It's funny how that works. But yeah, so I was literally.
How long were you working for the prison system then?
13 years.
Wow.
13 years, 1 month. Yeah, 13 years and 1 month to the day. And I walked out of there with my head held high and a lot of pride and a swagger because I did not bend. And, I wouldn't say the pride was good, although sticking up for what I believe was good. And I watched a lot of people start out by saying, no, not going to happen, not going to happen. I won't do it. And then they would eventually just, bend over and, okay, whatever. I don't know what I would do without my job. It's like, I'll find a different one. I'll eat out of a dumpster. I don't care. I'm committed. And thankfully, my wife came to the same conclusion, if not for slightly different reasons, more for health reasons. She's like, it probably would kill me. And so we ended up losing our jobs, which was fine. We ended up finally getting unemployment out of that because we weren't terminated for disciplinary or anything like that. And through that, I was able to get my CDL, which I was like, well, that, even if I don't even get a job with the CDL, that still looks good on your resume. And in that process, we ended up moving out to Idaho with my in-laws, her mom and her stepdad. And so, yeah, that was February of 22. And April of 22. I don't know why things happen in April, but they do. Oh, I guess I didn't share one other thing that I knew pretty early on in dating my wife. I didn't think it was really a coincidence that my stepson's birthday is April 7th, which was the same day that I shot Josh on his first birthday. And I felt like the universe was trying to balance itself out. And so April of 22, we're in Idaho, and my granddad dies, my mom's dad. But I did get to see him right before he passed, thankfully. And so that was good. And I started driving concrete truck, which is kind of what I do now, although now I'm running the batch plant. But yeah, I settled into Idaho pretty well, I think. I like it here. And yeah. So living with in-laws is hard, I'm sure you know. I think you said you did that.
My wife did that.
Oh.
The perfect family is a great big family that lives about 3 hours away. That's what they say. We have family around here and we love it. But family is a tricky thing sometimes.
Yeah. I ended up going back. We still go back to Walla Walla every once in a while. It's only 3.5 hours away now. but I was still moving some stuff a little bit. And one of the guys I worked with at the prison, he's very, very open about his relationship with God. And normally I was not real interested, but I respected the guy and I would listen. And he told me, he also got fired with all of us because he didn't want to take the shot. And so he was telling me, he's like, yeah, God told me it's time to move on. God got me this job. I was unable to run the mile, or I think it was a mile and a half for qualifications, physical PT test, essentially. Mm-hmm. He was like, I was unable to do it. My knee was killing me. It was injured. And I said, God, if you want me to have this job, do what you need to. And God healed his knee. And so he went and ran, and he's like, my knee still doesn't hurt. It's healed.
Oh, that's awesome.
And then he said, well, now God told me it's time to move on. There's something better for you. And I'm like, okay, I listened to him. So I happened to be back over there. And I tried to get together, rally the troops of us stubborn ones that refused. And he was the only one available. So I ended up going out to dinner with him and talking, and we were standing out by our cars getting ready to leave. And he just started talking about things that were changing for him, about how he no longer really listened to music. He would just usually listen to sermons or the Bible on audio Bible, and how it was changing him a little bit. And normally I would have been like, yeah, I'm not interested, and walk away. But for some reason, I just kind of stood there. And some of the things he was saying were, they were cluing me into, to the evils of, or the fact that most artists have actually sold their soul to the devil, and it's not a good thing. And it started opening my eyes a little bit, because, at that point I'm listening to heavy rock, metal, stuff like that. I was angry, I was, I got my nice house taken away from me, and had to sell it. And I mean, don't get me wrong, we walked away pretty well off from that, but still, God took care of us. But I was still angry, things weren't going my way. So yeah, I was listening to some pretty heavy stuff, and I started listening to the lyrics a little bit more, and it just really started popping out. Like these guys are actually literally singing about selling their soul to the devil.
That's not great.
And a lot of them are singing about the fact that they're upset they sold their soul to the devil. They're like, I don't think I got out very well on this deal. It's like, well, yeah, probably not. So that was kind of a seed planted, and that was in, I think, September of 22. And in April of 23, after not doing very well, still avoiding, my wife was just about fed up with me, and we were arguing more. Funny thing is, I realized last week I brought my legalism with me. I tried to run from it, and I brought it with me. I just didn't bring God with me.
What were you legalistic about then?
Just wanting to make rules for my son, and have him follow the rules. And and I meant well, but it was all about the rules, not about the relationship.
Sure.
And so I started counseling, and God definitely, this man definitely has the Spirit of God in him. He didn't immediately, start in with God. He asked me how I felt about it, and he would let me lead in that department. But he immediately, I thought I was just like, well, I probably just have PTSD. And so I told him my story. He's like, okay. Well, it sounds like you've pretty much dealt with that. And he gave me a couple more coping mechanisms. Don't let it, acknowledge it, feel it, and then move on. And then he said, how's your relationship with your son? He zeroed right in on the problem. I didn't know it was the problem, but he did. He figured it out real quick. And then he says, how's your relationship with your dad? And like I said, he he's a spirit-filled man, and I think he understands that relationships are where it's at. And so we started diving into that a little bit. I think I had a couple of sessions before going to the family reunion / memorial service for my granddad a year later in Missouri. Not too far from where you guys got together last time. And my dad was definitely seeing, he was seeing that where I was focused on the rules and on being right far more than the relationship. And so he spoke a lot of truth into me. And yeah, that was good. I was in a place I could actually hear it.
Yeah, how were you able to receive it? You were just like, your relationship
Sitting on the couch
ending
crying.
up.
Just sitting on the couch crying. But I felt love. I did. From everyone in the room. Oddly enough, I didn't really feel shame either. Even though it was a room full of people. I mean, they're all relatives. And that was a healing time. It was good. Let's see here. Where are we at?
2023.
So at this point, my dad's being very open and honest, and that was good. And he was speaking straight to my heart there. And it started me being a little bit more open to his, to our relationship. About the middle of 23, I think I was healed enough that even though for months every morning I'd be like, I'm going to quit drinking. I'm done. And by the afternoon, I was at the grocery store picking up another 12-pack. If I was out. I just didn't have the willpower. And about the summer of 23, I ran out and finally didn't go to the grocery store. Because I didn't feel like I needed it. I was starting to heal. And it was funny because we went to go floating on the river, in the middle of hot summer day. And we stop at the grocery store and my wife's like, you going to get yourself some beer? I'm like, no. It's like, do you have some? No. Are you quitting? Yeah. She's like, well, that's an interesting time to quit. We're going to go float the river. I'm like, I don't need it. I feel okay. And I did. I finally started feeling okay, but there were still times like I wouldn't go buy beer, but then I would still look for reasons to go have a burger so I could have a beer. I still felt the urge, but I was able to somewhat control it. Mostly. Obviously, I wasn't going to drive drunk, so I'd have to make sure I only had one, and I'd have to make sure I had plenty of time. And that lasted so I would say maybe I'd have 2 or 3 drinks a week at most. That's pretty good coming down from 5 to 7 a night.
Yeah, I'd say.
That's, and I wanted to, I just didn't have the willpower to do it. So talking with my counselor, and he really started speaking life into me because I was getting caught in that trap of my value came from what I did. I was trying to remodel a house and work full time, and I couldn't do it. And I knew I couldn't do it. And trying to have, a relationship with my son and my wife, and I couldn't do it all. And I felt like there was just way too much on my plate. And meanwhile, it's not going good at all with my in-laws. It's not a peaceful home. And my wife is starting to talk about buying a house and moving. And I was just so tired. I was literally in the middle of remodeling a bathroom and building an alcove around a tub. And I was just so tired. I was like, I don't want to move again. Just moved 2 years ago. And so I had a question about something. I don't even remember what it was a question about. Something about the plumbing. And so I called my dad I called him on WhatsApp so we could do a video call so I could show him what I was talking about. And apparently I was ready. And he started telling me a lot. He just started speaking life. Until I finally surrendered.
You just called him. You're like, "Hey, I have a question about this plumbing," and he's like, "Do you know that you've always been son?" And you're like, "Yes, I've always been son." Like, did he
Well,
just go for it?
I think we were on the phone for like 3 hours.
I remember him telling us about this.
Yeah, I think we were on the phone for like 3 hours. And I think the final question that I asked and finally allowed me to surrender was, I said, so you're not saying that I'm going to have to follow a law. You're saying that I'm going to want to. And he's like, yes. I said, okay. And that was it.
Want to what? Like live right?
I want to follow the law. I didn't want to try and white knuckle it. I mean, I'd been white knuckling it for years, trying to just be a decent person to my family. And I wasn't interested in having the 10 Commandments hanging over my head condemning me again. But essentially what I heard was, and I believed it, this is where the good stuff really starts. I believed that I would have a change of heart and I would want to. I would want to follow God and want to do what he asked me to do. And sure enough, I did. And I guess through this time, I probably won't come as any surprise. I definitely watched porn. I wouldn't say I struggled with it per se. We're talking like maybe once a month. But it was one of those, I feel empty and nothing satisfies. Well, maybe I'll try this.
Well, the body always remembers where the dopamine rush came from, right?
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of dopamine. Yeah.
All I got was shame.
For sure.
But that was one of those things, he started telling me about your podcast. And, he told me about Tyler's podcast. And I was like, okay. So he was set free from that. Okay. And I immediately believed it. And I haven't looked at it since. It just doesn't interest me at all. God set me free from it right away. Yeah.
Did you listen to Tyler's episode?
I did. I actually started that night. I put my headphones in as I was working on the shower. And my wife wasn't even there at the time. And I just started listening. Right from episode 1. And she got home and she immediately noticed something different. She's like, what's different? I'm like, I don't even remember. I was like, well, maybe we don't have to move. And I immediately got stuck with the lie and believed the lie. Well, now that I'm okay, it's my job to save my family and lead them and my in-laws. And it's my job to do that. And she saw that right away. It took me a couple of weeks to pull away from that and realize that was a lie. It was not my responsibility. My responsibility was just to mirror Christ. And
love him.
Needless to say, after that 20 year, well, probably more than 20 years in the desert, I was thirsty. I was hungry. And I started going through your podcast. It's funny, actually, Jadra's episode annoyed me more than anything.
Why?
She just sounded too happy. Way too happy. And I wasn't there.
That's what bothered Michaela, and then Michaela hated her too.
Yeah, I'm like, so I guess I didn't tell you what day that was. That was April 4th of 24. And I found out this year on April 4th that I don't want to step on my wife's story, but that was the same day she got freedom from drugs.
Wow.
God has a sense of humor. And I was actually telling somebody else that at church this morning. And I told him those days, and he's like, that's 3 days. I'm like, that didn't get by me. Don't worry, that didn't get by me. 3 days separate? Okay, yeah, that makes sense. There's something about 3, and I don't know. God definitely celebrates anniversaries, because this year on April 4th, he was just pouring it on. Just all day. All week. And that went from a week of, because it's been 11 years now, a week of me not being okay mentally for like a month, well, or at least a week, to I celebrate now. I celebrate life. And it's beautiful.
So you started listening to this thing, you're going through, what was the truth about God that was hitting you as you were, like, were you coming to the Bible studies, or were you more listening to the podcast for a while and then going to the Bible studies?
I was only listening to the podcast at first.
What was grabbing you about the stories?
Well, the transformation, really. Just that they were one way and then they weren't. And I really didn't even understand it at first. And I finally went and started watching Wave 1. And then, so that helped a bit. Started watching The Chosen. That helped again. Like I said, I was hungry. I was really hungry. My dad ended up sending me an episode of The Unfolding, which is another podcast. And I at the time, I was driving a dump truck back and forth sometimes 4 or 5 times a day. So I'd be 8 or 10 hours of drive time. And I was like, well, might as well listen to something. And so I did. And that's how I got through them all in like a month and a half. And then I caught up on the other one. And then I tried Jadra's, and I listened to like a couple of minutes of it, and I'm like, oh, it's too slow. And then I came back about 6 months later, and I listened to it. I was like, no, this is beautiful. This is amazing. Like, why didn't I like this before? I just hadn't calmed down yet. I hadn't let that peace saturate me. But the first thing that I just flat out refused to believe I had immediately was shame and condemnation. If I felt it, I said, no, that's not true. It's not there. I don't have it anymore. And I didn't feel it. Like, it would just go away. Because I chose to believe that God was not condemning me, that God would not shame me. And it was beautiful that I was able to do that. Don't get me wrong, things still creep in. You know, I still have old habits.
Sure.
But I refuse to feel that shame because I know it's not from God. And I definitely want to speak something about belief, because that's really what changed it for me, is I chose to believe. And that there's a story back in, I think it was 2015 or so. I don't remember if it was before or after I got married, but I was living there, and my son was a toddler, and you know how toddlers are with food. If it's different, they don't like it. And so I'm thinking, well, you know, we tried different things, and we finally got to the point where just, you know, leave him in his high chair and walk away. If he finishes it, great. If not, we'll put it in the fridge. You can finish it later. But just, you know, don't press, we found that was the best way. So we got done with dinner one night, and I remembered there was huckleberry ice cream in the freezer. And I didn't, okay, maybe it was a little rude to walk around eating huckleberry ice cream as he's not done with his dinner and can't have any yet. But I thought, well, maybe it'll be a good motivator for him. And so I go get a bowl, and I walk out of the kitchen, and he immediately perks up. What's that? And I said, horse poop. And he's like, yuck. I'm like, you want some? He's like, okay. And so I walk over and I give him a spoonful. And he starts making the nastiest, oh, that's disgusting. Oh, yuck, yuck, yuck. I said, hey, you want some huckleberry ice cream? And he's like, yeah. So I gave him another spoonful. And then I blew his mind and said, same stuff. And then 10 years later, I learned that lesson.
Only took 10
Belief
years.
literally changes your experience.
It's crazy that if you give somebody food and you don't mention anything about it, they'll be like, oh, whatever. But if you tell it like, this is the food that they fed the astronauts, they taste it and they're like, oh, this is actually good, because they believe that it's like special, and
Yeah.
that belief changes the flavor in their mouth.
It literally does change your experience. And that's one thing that God has been teaching me, is that's how you experience God, as you believe him. If you believe a lie, it's probably not going to be a great experience. When you believe the truth, it's everything you were built for. It's really is the key, is belief. And God gave us that authority, that free will to choose what we believe.
So I remember, man, it feels like you've been coming to our Bible studies for years. So when you said it was 2024, I was like, what? Because I remember seeing you there, and I didn't put two and two together. And then I saw your last name, and I'm like, oh, hold up. That's Floyd's son. And then you didn't have your camera on for a while, and then you started putting your camera on. And I was like, okay, because maybe I was nervous. I don't know. I was like, oh, I hope we represent the gospel okay to this new person who is giving it a chance. I don't want to ruin it. Was it nerve-wracking at all, or were you like, let me see what these guys are saying, or you had heard the podcast enough that you were like, man, I'm interested in just kind of knowing more?
Oh, I was in it. I was deep. I was basically immersing myself in gospel between listening to that, to your podcast, and blowing through that in no time at all. I started listening to the Move and Dusty Boys and everything. Just, I just immersed myself with it. I started downloading the talks that my dad gives at the church that he leads, and it's just, like I said, I just completely immersed myself in it, and it changes your world. I needed that renewing of the mind.
So as you've been immersing yourself with all this stuff, what has become your favorite thing about Jesus?
It's an excellent question. Well, probably the opposite of what I believed growing up. That there is no shame, there is no judgment. Well, there's no condemnation. And technically, there's really no judgment. I mean, as Jesus said, this is judgment, the light has come. And men who are evil hide from it. But those who aren't afraid of the light are okay, paraphrasing obviously, with being in the light. They're not scared of it. So judgment is ours, essentially. We choose whether or not we come into judgment. Eventually, everyone will come to that.
Well, Jesus says in John chapter 5, anybody who believes in me will not come into judgment, because they've already gone from death to life, right?
They've already come into the light. They've chosen judgment. And they've been judged righteous because they've come into the light.
So your favorite thing about Jesus is like he's not trying to get you in trouble?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, that's pretty much all my entire day is just like a running conversation with Jesus, the Holy Spirit, God. Just, it's, they speak to me through music. They speak to me through podcasts. It's just through sermons I might listen to, whatever. It's just a running conversation all day. And it's beautiful. I mean,
so when you saw that, like, when did your dad catch on that you were catching on? Was it after that first 3-hour conversation?
Oh, he knew. I think he said, let's he said, "Can I pray with you?" I'm like, "Yeah." And at the end, we're both crying. And he's like, "God got you." I'm like, "Oh yeah. Oh yeah." He did. I knew immediately. It was instant. I felt it. I didn't understand everything, but I felt it. I had the Holy Spirit. I let him take control.
Man, I think this is the coolest thing ever. Because like when I hear you're there and you like how rational and like that God is actually rational, that intelligence and wisdom actually originate with him, and you're at some sermon and everyone's like, wah, wah, I don't like that. And that immediately rubs you the wrong way because it seems like God he's not real. Like he doesn't like wisdom. He wants us to be robots, and you push back. And so for years, God just seems like lame because it's fake news. It's like he doesn't want us to think, he just wants us to fall in line or we're going to get judged. And then to come around to where you are now, where you're like, it seems to me like you're like, the whole thing makes perfect sense because he loves us.
Yeah. I refuse to follow a God who didn't want me to use the intelligence he gave me. I wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
I mean, why would a God create you with intelligence and then tell you not to use it? Just be a blind robot. I'm not interested in that.
And so there's no bad news in this good news. Like the good news is just good. And you can either, but that's the problem is, man, people try to inject their bad stuff into it so much that it waters it down, and then people don't hear it and their lives aren't transformed. And then we try to say it and people are like, no, that's too good.
I don't know. As Mercy Me's song says, it's not good news. It's the best news ever.
Yeah.
It's one of my favorite songs.
Well, man, seeing you and hearing this story, man, if you could, let's jump in the DeLorean. Let's jump in there. And where are we going to go? Right back to April. Maybe not April, maybe July of 2013. And you're feeling all this guilt and shame, and you're living in this thing. If you got to run into that guy and put your arm around him and sit down with him, even have a cold one with him or let him have a cold one, and you just sit there with him, what would you say to him?
I'd probably tell him that God isn't who he thinks he is. God's so much better. And one day you'll meet him, the real God, the one that loves you beyond anything.
At the end of this whole thing, it just kind of goes back to God is love, right? And how do we know that? Because when we were against him, that's when he died for us. Yeah. Man, Jonathan, thank you so much for sharing your story. I'm super glad it was in April. Let's redeem April. You know, what you believe about April 7 changes what April 7 is. If April 7 is just like if we're driving by and it's a billboard for all the pain and all the hurt, well, then you have to feel that. But if it's, look what God has redeemed me from, look how God loves me, then it's like what you said, then April doesn't have to be that thing every single year. It can be an anniversary of a revelation of God's love.
And that it is.
Praise the Lord, man. Thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for listening to the podcast. And now your story is going to be in here and it's going to bless so many people. So thank you so much.
All it's got to do is bless one person and I'll be happy.
I'm sure it will, man. It's blessed me already.
All right.